Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, and CeeDee Lamb could all be returning from injuries this week, but can you trust them in your starting lineups? We say yes. We reveal our full Week 7 wide receiver fantasy rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today is Crossover Thursday on the network, and Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Today, we are finishing up our Week 7 positional rankings with wide receivers. We'll hop right into the top of our rankings with no surprise here, Amon-Ra St. Brown at number 1 against the Buccaneers. Now, normally your number 2 is no surprise at all either. It's Jaxon Smith-Njigba, but I have him much lower this week at number 10 because I'm worried about this defense against this, the Texans defense, that Derek Stingley has one job and one job only, and that's to just shut down JSN. And really, Sam Darnold's passing to nobody else in this offense. So that's all he has to do. And Stingley has been the best corner in the league, in my personal opinion, over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, there's that for sure, but the Darnold-JSN connection is going now. If this was in Houston, I would be a little bit more worried, but the fact it's in Seattle here, and Seattle is just a better home team overall. We know that in their history, and he gets so much volume, and he gets moving around quite a bit, where that's going to help him as well. He can play the slot, he can play outside. They've really taken advantage of his route versatility this year. So, yeah, you're going to drop him a few notches maybe, but he's just been so good with so much volume, and Darnold has been locked into him since early in the season. And I think the other thing is, look, the Seahawks have tried. They want to be a running team, but right now they're having some kinks in that. So they're going to have a high passing volume if they're going to move the ball against the Texans. So, look, whether you have him a little bit lower or a little bit higher, I mean, he's an every week play. I think he's already exceeded expectations. So if he has one slightly off game, I think you'll live with it.
Yeah, I could see it being like the Week 4 game where he went 5 for 4 for 79. Like, he'll have a couple big chunk plays here or there, but I do expect this to be not a game where he finishes in the top 5 or anything like that. Just lower your expectations just a little bit because he has been dominating down the field this year, and the Texans have allowed just 3 deep receptions all season long. That's 20-plus air yards. So their secondary is just super legit. Now, after that, we have similar guys here. Nico Collins, I have at 3. You have at 5 against the Seahawks. George Pickens, we both have top 6 overall. I have him at 4. You have him at 6. Now, so it seems like CeeDee Lamb could be back this week. Does Pickens stay that high, even if CeeDee Lamb is back? And then are you just trusting both of them to have big games against this Commanders secondary?
Yeah, it's like conditional week, right? If Mike Evans comes back, do you trust this person? If Deebo Samuel has to share it again with Terry McLaurin, do you trust this? But I think you just have to say, look, I'm not saying a player of Lamb or McLaurin or Evans' character gets, or quality of play is going to be dropped right away, right? They're going to put him in full board. It's not going to be like, okay, we're going to go slowly with you or ease them in. They're not going to ease these players in. They're going to be full speed. That said, Pickens has just been destroying things downfield. The Commanders also give it up plenty downfield. What may bring down a little bit, I think, again, you have to look at where the roles are, right? Lamb and Jake Ferguson. You might have to cool off Jake Ferguson's volume a little bit, right? In the middle, in the slot, that's where you would get it. But Pickens has been very good at his very specific role, which is to stretch the field, make those big plays, playing off Lamb. So it actually could help him where he's not necessarily seeing the double coverage downfield, and he could stretch it a little bit better, Lamb drawing a little bit more attention. So I think he'll be okay. I think he's indoctrinated himself as a very important number 2 for the Cowboys at this rate. I mean, he's just so hot. You have to stick with him. And Deebo Samuel, look, where do they put him against the Cowboys and the opposite side of this matchup, man? it doesn't matter. If they get McLaurin and Deebo, it's just going to add more passing fun to this game because I'm not sure either team is going to have all that much rushing success in this game, and the game scripts could be out of hand. So I'm bringing on all the passers, and I think having those, quote, number one guys really helps the other guy.
Yeah, look out for the Commanders' practice report on Friday because both McLaurin and Deebo did miss practice yesterday. So McLaurin came back to practice, then missed. So we got to see if either of them are going to play. But if one is there, if two are there, they both should have good games, whichever one is on the field. The Cowboys are allowing the most points to wide receivers this season. They've allowed the most touchdowns with 12. So, this is a great matchup. And hopefully for Jaden Daniels' sake, too, he at least has one of these weapons out there. But if they're available, you play them. Justin Jefferson, I have at 5, you have at 4. And then Courtland Sutton, I have at 6, and you also have him high this week at 9. And we're also putting DK Metcalf in our top 8 as well. We both have him at wide receiver 8. Both good matchups for Sutton and Metcalf, specifically Sutton, who gets the Giants, and they're allowing the 3rd most points to wide receivers this season, the most receiving yards to wide receivers. It was a down week for Sutton in week 6, but I think he has a big bounce back week in week 7.
Yeah, that also is tied into Bo Nix. That passing game is struggling. I know there's so much focus on the Jets passing game in that game in London, but the Broncos offense didn't look all that great, and they were fortunate to get away with a victory there because the Jets were just way worse than them, and they have a defense that has 50 sacks now, so that helped. But Bo Nix at home, I think he's going to have to do a little bit more. It's good that the Giants are a little bit more competitive with Jackson Dart and Bo Nix in terms of this duel here. You'll also have Cam Scatterbo keeping the Giants moving the ball. So that's good in this matchup because it opens it up here for these teams a little bit more. And with Nix, again, he's better at home. He's better in his connection with Sutton at home as well. And look, it was just a weird game last week, and nobody got it done. There was a random third-string tight end touchdown with a guy running wide open. That's not going to necessarily happen again in this game. So go with the principles. I think you look at Sutton. We talked about J.K. Dobbins. These are the key guys that are going to be consistent for the Broncos. On the other side, again, Scatterbo, start a receiver at your own risk. But I do like Nix to kind of have to do some things in this game, especially at home, and that's going to help Sutton produce.
Yeah, and then right after Sutton, I had Drake London. You have him not far behind at wide receiver 10. I have him at 7. Mentioned DK Metcalf at 8. Now, I have Mike Evans all the way at 9 if he were to play this week. And it sounds like as long as there's not a setback, like he's back at practice, as long as there's not a setback with his hamstring in practice, it sounds like he's going to play. So, I mean, without Ibuka there, without Godwin there, Baker's really going to have to look for Mike Evans in what should be a very high-scoring game against the Buccaneers and the Lions in prime time. So, Lions are a really good defense in terms of favorable matchups for fantasy wide receivers. They're giving up the 4th most points to wide receivers this year. Both of their starting corners could be out again this week. Plus, Brian Branch is suspended in the secondary for the Lions. So I'm really, really liking this matchup for Mike Evans. And I think even with Ibuka there, he was getting 8, 11, 9 targets. And the production wasn't great. But now this week, he's just going to be so necessary. And those 3 games that he did play, they were all hard matchups. Atlanta against the number 1 pass defense. Derek Stingley in week 2. He had 11 targets, but only 5 receptions, 56 yards. And then he saw Sauce Gardner in week 3. So I do expect this to be a huge blow-up game for Mike Evans if he's ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, Tez Johnson roll, Emeka Ibuka roll. I mean, Jalen McMillan is still on the mend here. So they're really needing Mike Evans to return for this one. I mean, it's a shell what they have. I think the only other receiver that you could look at if Evans would return, or really if Evans doesn't play, I like Sterling Shepard again because of the way he can versatily run routes here. He's a good slot guy, so not having Brian Branch also helps there. He's just a guy that I think Baker Mayfield also has the most trust in as being an experienced guy. So whether or not Evans plays, I think Shepard, you can extract some value, but Evans is definitely in the candidate for the top 15 play this week.
Now, the AFC West wide receivers, where it's a little tricky with them, right? With the Chargers, who do you rank higher, Ladd McConkey or Quentin Johnston or Keenan Allen? You like Ladd McConkey a lot this week. And then for the Chiefs, what do you do now that Rashee Rice is coming back? But you really like Xavier Worthy still. I'm much lower on him. We will get to that and the rest of our wide receiver rankings right after a quick break. This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. You get the same quality service you had before, but for a fraction of the price. And the setup is super easy. You'll be up and running in minutes. And like I said, you can keep your same number. Ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Upfront payment of $45 is required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on the unlimited plan. Taxes and fees are extra. See Mint Mobile for details. This episode is also brought to you by Built. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards you can actually see. When you pay rent through Built, you can earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about building you around your entire neighborhood. With Built, your rent finally works for you. You're earning points every month on something you already have to pay. Whether you're grabbing food at your favorite local restaurant or heading to the gym, you're still earning rewards. Turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's joinbuilt, joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. And make sure to use that link so that they know we sent you. Let's continue our week 7 wide receiver rankings. And at number 11, you have Ladd McConkey. And I'm a little bit lower on him at wide receiver 18. And I think if Quentin Johnston is going to be active, I might even move him lower than that. He had a really good game last week, his first game with over 75 receiving yards this season with 100 yards and a touchdown. But 42 of those yards did come on the last catch, right, of the game when they needed to get down the field goal range quickly against that Dolphins defense. I'm just not impressed with the way he's been utilized this year, and I can't put him all the way up at number 11 like you have him.
Yeah, I think the past couple of weeks have made Justin Herbert maybe realize I got to get the ball in this guy's hands a little bit more. Look, Keenan Allen is slow. He can't do too many things after the catch right now. I know he was reliable in the pass for him. And Quentin Johnston, you can't always get that deep shot to work, right? I mean, so McConkey is kind of the happy medium because he can stretch the field outside. He can play inside if you need it. They just need to get him more involved in general, especially with the running game. Look, it's okay, like they survived, but I don't know if they're going to be able to run as easily this week against the Colts, so that's opening up the passing game. So, again, I think McConkey has a good matchup against the secondary. I think it's a little bit tougher elsewhere. So I'm having confidence in him that they're just getting him warmed up and realizing, wait, he's really good. He's the guy that we need to get involved a little bit more than these two. And Herbert is inconsistent, and I think Herbert's slowly finding his way back to what he needs to do, and McConkey needs to be a big part of that.
I think that's all fair. And I do think this matchup should be high scoring, right? So there will be opportunities for him to score a touchdown for the third straight game. Now, Xavier Worthy is sitting there at number 12 for you with Rashee Rice at number 13. I'm with you with Rice. I have him at 13 in his first game back against the Raiders. I do expect him to be heavily utilized immediately in this offense. But with Worthy, I am very much lower. I have him at wide receiver 25. He just really hasn't been doing anything, even with Rice not there, right? And week 4, when he came back from injury, he had a good game. But week 5, even with 9 targets, only came to 6 receptions for 42 yards. In week 6 against the Lions, it was just 4 targets, 2 receptions for 20 yards. He did come down with a touchdown, but there's too many guys there at the moment. It's now going to be Rice and Worthy and Hollywood Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster and Travis Kelce and Tyquan Thornton. It's like Mahomes will spread this ball around, with Rice, I think, being the top target. So I'm kind of getting away from Worthy now as we move forward with Rice.
Yeah, I just think the Chiefs are going to unleash everything they've got on the Raiders, and I think this is going to be a fun game for them. I think Patrick Mahomes has been waiting for this moment. Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, Hollywood Brown are all on the field together for him. So this could be old school Chiefs where they just press the buttons and like it could just come down to who gets the touchdown or the big play or the yards. But I could see them just saying, look, we want to go back to passing the ball like nuts. And finally we can do it. Another development that they had is I think they got settled by a little bit of luck that Jalen Moore had to start with some issues with rookie. So they're like, okay, he's got our pass protection shored up. We're getting this guy back. I mean, that was the biggest storyline for the Chiefs offense. And they did really well last week against the Lions. They were talking about how excited they were to get Rashee Rice back. So I think Rice for sure has a big game. They're going to try to get him in the red zone. Rice is going to basically take over where Juju Smith-Schuster was in the big slot. I don't think you'll see as much Hollywood Brown. Basically, Brown has been taking over the Tyquan Thornton role going forward. So I think there's room for Worthy and Rice to exist, and Worthy just scares everyone downfield. So having another threat with Rice can make things very dangerous. So I just like everything with the Chiefs offense this week. They're big favorites at home against the Raiders. It's in a prime window where the whole country's going to be watching. They're going to be ready to let it rip and to show the real Chiefs are back. So I think everyone gets some this week.
All right. I think they're going to run a lot. So I kind of like Isaiah Pacheco
Yeah,
too. We'll talk.
I think just get them all in if you got
get them all in. All right. Number 12, I had Devontae Adams. You have him at 16. I get it. The connection between him and Stafford aren't great, but without Puka there, he should get so many targets. He has to just, he can get a ton of volume and come through in that matchup. At 13, like I said, we both have Rashee Rice. 14, I have Rome Odunze. You have him at 15. Good matchup against the Saints. It was a down game for him last week, but I think he bounces back and has a solid game. Now, Brian Thomas Jr., though, let's talk about him because he has been putting it together a little bit finally, right? In the last 2 weeks, he's had 80 yards. Last week, he had 90 yards with 10 targets, and he finally came through with a touchdown last week. Can we trust him against the Rams? Can we trust back-to-back good weeks? I think you can. And I think us having him at 15 is a reasonable spot to rank him this week.
Yeah, it's not as quick as we want to develop, but you can see signs of the Jaguars slowly figuring this out under Liam Cohen. Look, took them a little bit longer than it did with the Bears with Ben Johnson. These things happen. Again, defense is ahead of offense, and you try to get to those points. And look, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have one of his better games. For some reason, he likes really playing in London. The Rams secondary is okay. I mean, but I think you can beat them enough with what they have. And I think the Jaguars are feeling like the confidence they need to rebound in this game. The Rams, certainly with Puka Nacua out, that it could favor the Jaguars being on the field a little bit more to produce with their offense. So I think Thomas is going to be involved. I don't think, again, the Jaguars can just run nuts and win this game with Travis Etienne. So when you look at that, I say, yeah, Thomas is going to get a bunch of targets. Really, what hasn't developed is we thought, oh, Travis Hunter might cut into this or De'Ami Brown. That really hasn't happened. And now we don't have Brenton Strange even available tight end. So I think Thomas is going to get it done with volume, and eventually it's going to all open up for him as the go-to guy like it was last season in the Jaguars offense.
I hope so. Now, to close out my top 20, I have Jalen Waddle at 16, CeeDee Lamb at 17, Ladd McConkey at 18, AJ Brown at 19, and Terry McLaurin, if he's back, at 20. To close out your top 20, you had Adams at 16, Teteroa McMillan at 17, T. Higgins at 18, who we'll get to later, Jalen Waddle at 19, and then Keenan Allen at 20, with AJ Brown at 21 right behind him. But those are two guys I want to talk about right now, is Jalen Waddle against the Browns and AJ Brown against the Vikings. This game for Waddle, I mean, Waddle has been highly productive without Tyreek Hill, but hard matchup going into Cleveland. And the weather in Cleveland's supposed to be terrible this week. Like the wind and rain is supposed to be absolutely atrocious. So that's hard. And then AJ Brown can just disappear at any moment. But like he has this whole season basically besides one game. And he gets a super, super hard matchup against the Vikings, who have allowed the fewest points per game to wide receivers by far this year. So who do you trust more? You do have Waddle ranked higher, but with the weather, does that change anything?
Well, given that Tua is throwing passes that cannot be affected by wind at this point, they're so short. I mean, Jalen Waddle is basically getting extended handoffs, much like Devin Achane at this point. I mean, it's what their offense has come down to. I hate to say this is it. This is all they can do. They don't have that speed, quickness, downfield ability without Tyreek Hill stretching the field. So I think Waddle's a little bit okay. I mean, it's going to be that old school Waddle when he was averaging maybe less than 10 yards per catch and just getting some PPR junk right thrown into him. And this offense is pretty much the only way to move the ball is throw it to Waddle and Achane at this point. I mean, and the tight end occasionally with Darren Waller, but it's a little tougher matchup for Waller downfield against the Browns, the linebackers, and safeties. So I think it could be a lot of these two guys. Now, Brown and Smith, they could go off at any time. Like, I don't think it's always based on the matchup, but it is in some regard because the Eagles, I think, want to get the running game going and to try to set that up and then transition to getting Brown and Smith the ball downfield. So there's like a process that needs to kind of happen to get them the ball. But I just don't think you can force feed it and get it done. And I don't think the Eagles want to do that. They want to win whatever the plan says to win. If it's running Barkley and running Hurts, then that's where you're going to win. Throw to the tight end, that's the way they're going to win. So I don't have a lot of confidence in Brown and Smith, but you can't drop them out of plays, right? Because if you don't play them, that's the week they do something. They're just too talented. It's very frustrating. It's much like we saw with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase early in the year. Eventually, Chase broke out. We're still waiting for Higgins.
Yeah, and I think if one of the guys are going to have a good game, it's going to be A.J. Brown between Devonta Smith and him, because the two guys that have found success against this Vikings secondary, it's the big guys, and DK Metcalf and Roma Dunze, those big, fast players that are just really hard to stop. So I would lean the A.J. Brown side, and Jalen Waddle, you're just going to have to hope for those real short targets and for him to be able to do something after the catch. Maybe with the rain, he'll be extra slippery for the defenders to try to tackle him. But I did mention that T. Higgins is your wide receiver 18 this week. So we're going to take a quick break, discuss why he's so high for you on this Thursday night game, and then finish up our wide receiver rankings right after we hear from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. That's a August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV from Mazda, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Michelle, time to close the show. And we teased before we hit the break that I have T. Higgins rather high. This is more of a hopeful ranking for T. Higgins. I think I'm starting to see signs with Joe Flacco that Flacco's going to keep it simple, throw to Jamar Chase, throw to T. Higgins. And you figure the Steelers are going to do everything they can to slow down Chase, who's been rather good, regardless of the quarterbacks, the past couple weeks. So I don't know. Things are eventually going to open up for T. Higgins as they get going here. And he's starting to see the volume you want. And I think, again, once you get the Joe Flacco full practice week like we've had this week, well, almost full, you'll get it to the point where that connection is really going to rev up again. I think that's the biggest reason they picked him up over Jake Browning.
Yeah, and I like T. Higgins better with Joe Flacco for sure. I have him as a playable guy, but more of as a flex at wide receiver 27. Last week he did get 8 targets with Joe Flacco, turned into 5 receptions, 62 yards in a hard matchup on the road against the Packers, right? The Steelers defense is good, and they're going to get to Flacco, but they have still allowed the 6th most receiving yards per game to wide receivers. They've just been really good at not allowing touchdowns. So only 3 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers throughout the year. I think T. Higgins can have an okay game. I just a little bit more worried than you are overall about his ceiling, but I don't hate the ranking. Moving on, Jameson Williams, we both have ranked as a good, solid low end wide receiver 2 start this week. You have him at wide receiver 23. I have him at wide receiver 24 in what should be a high scoring game against the Buccaneers. We just really like the Lions this week.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the way Jameson Williams got going last week. We were down on him. Of course, he gets going against the Chiefs, and they don't really do all that much. And Amon-Ra has a down game, so they did make sure to take Amon-Ra out of the game. They did let Laporta and Williams try to beat them. It did not work. So the Chiefs had a good game plan in that one. So Williams, again, should go back to the potential deep ball against the Buccaneers. I know they got Jamel Dean back, and he was pretty good last week. But, again, Williams is going to be indoctrinated into their offense. The thing is, the key for Williams to forget those downfield shots, they got to run the ball well. With Jahmyr Gibbs and Dave Montgomery, they typically do that at home. They can typically do that against the Buccaneers. So I'm fine with that. Now, not too far, and also in the same game, I have Sterling Shepard again. I like him as kind of a possession type, like half-point PPR player this week, more so than taking a shot on any of those other people, especially with Mike Evans on the return. And then one guy, I think there's going to be a bit of an overcorrection. Calvin Ridley's another injury that we look at. Marvin Harrison Jr., another one here that we look at. But Calvin Ridley's the injury that I think could open it up for Alec Ayamanor. Look, the play calling has been ambiguous. They've handed it off from Brian Callahan to Bo Hardegree. Then you got a new coach in there, and Mike McCoy has some offensive experience. So I think Ayamanor is going to be used a little bit more because they saw that connection with Cam Ward and they went away from it early. So taking a dark throw with him, especially with the matchup being so good against the Patriots secondary.
Yeah, you're definitely higher on both Sterling Shepard and Io Manor than I am. But I have Io Manor like as a flex type play. I think he's a sleeper, right, that you can start. And then with Sterling Shepard, if Mike Evans is there, then you just really don't know if it's going to – who else is it going to go to? Is it going to be Cade Otton as the second guy or Cameron Johnston or Tez Johnson? So I'm kind of going to stay away from the rest of the Buccaneers wide receivers, but I'm sure someone else would step up alongside Mike Evans to be at least a playable guy. But some guys I have up there that you know are Quentin Johnston at 21, Michael Pittman Jr. I have at 22. Tedero McMillan is at 23, so I'm actually a little bit lower on him than you are this week. You had him in your teens, but only because he has to face Sauce Gardner. A little bit worried about that. We're both pretty similar on Chris Olave. You have him at 25. I have him at 26. Again, I have T. Higgins at 27, but your wide receiver 27 is Romeo Doubs this week. I also have Doubs ranked higher than any of the other Packers wide receivers this week at 33 against the Cardinals. But what about Matthew Golden? Like, is he a playable guy? Because Romeo Doubs has been stealing the touchdowns, but outside of that week 4 game, it's been pretty meh for Doubs overall. Golden seems to be getting a little bit more involved as of late.
Yeah, it's really hard to put together and know what you're going to get from the Packers wide receivers from week in and week out. I'm calling this is the kind of game I'm expecting. Jordan Love is going to be efficient. He's going to throw for only like 200 yards in this one. They're going to run all over them. They're going to get a couple touchdowns from the quarterback, probably one to Kraft, one to Doubs. That's what I'm seeing. I think they'll contain the deep ball a little bit here with Matthew Golden. The Packers are going to have to sustain and grind some drives. They'll be fine doing that. I don't think you'll see the Cardinals do a lot. I mean, their offense could be really shorthanded. We'll see about Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison situation, all that. But I think the Packers' ease of this game is going to limit the opportunities except for the red zone scoring. And when you look at that, Kraft and Doubs do that a lot better than Matthew Golden. So that's all I'm looking at here. Like I don't know. I could be wrong the way this game is going to go. I mean, I can and could be for sure. But when you look at it, the Cardinals just don't have a lot of contests in this game. And I think that's going to help the Packers control the action, not need to put the ball up too much in the air. That means not taking too many risks with the downfield shots.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, Stephon Diggs, we both have him as a playable guy this week at 26 and 28 against the Titans. I have Keenan Allen at 29, Jordan Addison at wide receiver 31. You're a little bit lower on 35. But one guy I want to hit on here to finish up today's show is Kendrick Bourne, because last 2 weeks, I mean, he's been a monster, right? But he gets the Falcons this week. You have him at 30. I'm at 32. But the Falcons are the number 1 pass defense this year, number 1 total defense as well. And if they get back George Kittle, right, and if they get back Brock Purdy, even though it does seem like it's going to be Mac Jones starting, can we trust Kendrick Bourne? I think as long as it's Mac Jones as starting quarterback, you can, because they have that connection. If it were to be Purdy, I probably would back off of him.
Yeah, that was part of my reasoning to not recommending Bourne. Is look at one point earlier in the week that Purdy could be trending in. No, we're not quite sure. Then Mac Jones might be trending in. And I just don't think Mac Jones is going to have a lot of time. The Falcons' pass rush is going nuts at this point. They're really playing very good pass defense. They're having versatile pass rush guys. Jalon Walker has had an impact as we thought he might early coming in. So and the secondary is playing pretty well and not allowing a lot of big plays. So I don't think it's his type of game, especially if George Kittle can return. And then some of those big play opportunities where Kittle can create better mismatches down the seam than he can with Kendrick Bourne. So that's where buyer beware on Bourne. Again, like definitely out on if it's Purdy, but if it's Mac Jones, again, just a little bit careful just based on how this matchup is going, the way the Falcons' pass defense is playing.
That will be it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen of the day. For your second listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler the Madman Rowland gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will be back tomorrow to give you our sleepers of the week at each position, and then also get into our daily fantasy football talk as well. Don't miss it. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. Bye, y'all.